Welcome to Transforming Trauma. I'm Eve. Them and hope you'll hear yourself in these conversations and realize you're not as alone in the struggle. Maybe it'll inspire you to connect with someone you love about your own recovery. Transforming Trauma is presented in partnership with Rachel Grant Coaching, and more resources can be found at rachelgrantcoaching.com. Now on to the show. I'm very excited to have you here with me and my guest, Kaylee Murphy, who will be sharing with us her story of hope and empowerment. You'll gain encouragement and insight around transforming pain into poetry and how reconnecting with our creative essence can be a gateway to healing, connection, and freedom. First, I'd like to tell you a little about my guest, Kaylee. Kaylee Murphy is a creative, sensitive soul devoted to supporting others and connecting with their bodies, unlocking their wisdom, and living their deepest devotion. She recently released her first published book of poetry titled Between Me and My Bones, Poems for the Perseverant Heart. She is also the creator of Moon Body Living, where she offers one-on-one embodiment coaching and meditations rooted in somatic and spiritual exploration. So without further ado, welcome, Katie, to Transforming Trauma.
Hi. Thank you.
So to get us started, I'd love to just invite you to share a little bit about your healing journey and where you're at today.
It's taking a breath. Yeah, I feel I've been on a healing path for over 10 years now, and it started pretty much right before we met, where I was at the University of Notre Dame. And this was a path that I was following all the things that society says we should do, going to a very good college, studying business. My family, my dad and my grandpa all went there. So there was also this familial connection there. And I spent, since I was a little girl, it was like, this is my destiny. This is where I'm supposed to go. And then once I got there, I realized it wasn't my path. And combined with that was a lot of internal struggle and suffering. My mental health was really impacted. Towards the end, it was very dark for me. Everything around me was falling apart as everything inside of me was falling apart too. So I couldn't keep up the grades anymore. I couldn't go to class. My friendships were difficult to maintain. And I was really in the grips of an eating disorder and self-harm and just depression and anxiety. And something within me, which is that wise, intuitive voice that I believe we all had, said, leave, like drop out of college, which was something that I thought I would never do because it was this dream that I thought I had to follow. And when I left, I felt pretty broken at the time and lost. And I came back to Long Island, and my mom, who had been on a spiritual path for a few years, recommended that I go to the Omega Institute, which is where I met you, Jocelyn. And that beautiful place, for people who don't know, it's a holistic learning center. There's lots of teachers that come in, and there are workshops every week and weekend. And it's just a beautiful community of people that I feel are thinking outside the box, are on an internal journey, and also wanting to be of service to others. And I was exposed to so many different forms of spirituality and meditation and different lifestyles, like people just living very differently than what I had been told was like, this is the path. And I went back there for, I don't even know how many seasons, maybe 6 or yeah, it was a lot of seasons over the years. And maybe it was 5, but somewhere around 5 or 6. And then even too, when I wasn't there, I was traveling, living at other centers. And I write this in the book, even though I have spent a lot of my 20s, because I'm 30 now, traveling and exploring and going to these different places, what I'm most interested in is the internal journey that I've been on. Because even, there were times I was in Greece or Chile, like it was more what's happening within me at any moment. And I've been on a journey of recovery in many different forms, which has included eating disorder and addiction, recovery from traumas that I've been through, and recovery also with dealing with a chronic condition. And for me, where that's landed me today is I'm in Boulder, Colorado, which is also quite a mecca for different viewpoints and spirituality and all of these things. And I'm lately have been turning my attention towards how can I be of service? Like, I feel like I've been given so much and have really learned a lot on my path. And now it's like, how can I offer that back to others? And this book is a way that I've done that, where all of these poems were written throughout this journey that I just talked about, starting in my early 20s, and now I'm a decade later, 30. And it was really taking, like, a lot of my writing came from painful moments in my life and needing a space to process and to feel and to experience whatever was present, and asking to be seen in each moment. And so the book, it's kind of crazy that it's just to be able to hold it in my hands and see it all together. But I didn't write these poems. Yeah, and see you hold it. I didn't write these poems with the intention of like, I'm going to make a book one day. It was more, I need an outlet for what is happening within my, it's titled Between Me and My Bones, the spaces between my bones, like what was happening so deep within me. And really like reclaiming my voice too. That's been a big part of my healing journey, is reconnecting back to like, what is my voice? Not the voice that I've been told or how I should be or what I was conditioned, or even like how painful and traumatic experiences have shaped my lack of speech, or like how I think it's okay to speak, but more letting myself be messy and human and authentic. So that's some of my journey.
I thought this might happen to me. I'm just really at a loss of words. It's such a unique experience to be here, both around the same age, more or less, and having met in our early 20s at such a particularly potent, ripe, and vulnerable time in our respective healing journeys. It's like kind of surreal to look at you and to see, to see like how your essence is the same, and how your voice is clear and powerful, and that the timing of meeting, just sort of being on our respective journeys but crossing paths. It's hard to sort of wrap my mind around the small and little like ways that we each show up like on our own time. And it was particularly meaningful to to meet you and to feel both your support, but also your quiet strength. And like, it was like we were there, but not not entangled in the way that a lot of, I think, friendships can feel like when you're going through the ringer.
Yeah.
Felt like there was this like really special trust in each other's resilience that is really unique for me. And so it is truly an honor to get to hear more about where you've been and where you're at today. So thank you for sharing a piece of your story.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way. It's just so cool to be like, yeah, there can be that spaciousness and then that reconnection and spaciousness. And it's really beautiful, that dance.
Yeah. So knowing what it's like to go through the ups and downs of trauma recovery and healing, I wondered if you might speak to maybe something that's been a challenging part of your, publishing your first book, which congratulations. I got to go to your kind of opening book launch talk and immediately ordered this copy afterwards and have been savoring each page. Admittedly, I like didn't want to to finish, so I have not finished, and I feel good about that because that feeling when you don't want something to end. Like I'm really cherishing the pages, and I don't know. I'm curious to learn more about it. So please share what you feel inclined to share.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you saying the savoring. That means a lot to me when people have messaged me saying they're taking their time with it, or like reading a poem a day. And it's like, yeah, you can have this be whatever you want it to be. So with the publishing the book, one of the challenges I'm really interested in parts work, and I'll name the different parts that come up and engage with them. And it helps me to create some like spaciousness and a relationship to whatever part is arising, or sometimes there's many parts dancing about. And
Can you say a little bit what you mean when you say parts? I think I know, but just
yeah, and I've read a little bit and studied a bit because I've studied psychology, internal family systems, and I believe Richard Schwartz is the creator of it. And there are these different parts within us that often are trying to protect us and keep us safe, but sometimes cause a lot of turmoil within us. So I feel part of my path is befriending these parts. And one of them is perfectionism. And that part came up really strongly with this book. And there would be these moments where like I just couldn't figure out how to do something, or like the cover wasn't perfect, or this poem wasn't perfect. And I would get into this state of overwhelm. Like my nervous system would get really riled up, and I'd feel a bit out of control, to be honest. And I felt the pressure coming from the perfectionist part of like, we need to figure this out now and it needs to be perfect. And I had that happen a few times before really pausing and being like, okay, I need to step away and look inside and see what is asking to be seen, to be befriended, healed. And what I realized with the perfectionism, and this has been with, I was very like high functioning in school, all A's, like the perfectionism part has always been there, at least since I can remember, from pretty young. But I could see that this part was really just trying to keep me safe, because it thought, well, if we do everything perfectly, if the book is perfect, or going back to my, high school years, if I get all the perfect grades, then we'll be safe and we'll be loved and we'll be validated. People will celebrate us. When I say us, I'm talking about myself and the parts. And so, yeah, it was really a dance for me of learning to not resist that this part was here, but more to see how I could embrace it and even work with it, because it has helped me, and it did help me write the book and put it out into the world. And there were certain moments where I was like, okay, I need to let go for a bit and just surrender and like step away from the book or whatever I was doing on the computer for the book, and just get out in nature and resource myself. And so I learned about this dance of like surrender and action, of like when to let go and be like, things aren't, to just trust, really, like to just trust that even if I step away, and that time going out into nature, I love going by the creek, like being near the creek or the mountains, that's just as much part of birthing this book. It's not all like on the computer, putting the manuscript together, having everything be just how I want it. And then also embracing messiness. Like part of the book is very human to me. It's talking about my struggles and and celebrations and everything in between, the joy and the pain, and to allow the book itself to be imperfectly perfect and know that that is enough. Because I know one of my core wounds is like, I'm not enough, it's never enough. And that is just reinforced through perfectionism of like, we're just never enough.
Mm-hmm.
But what's beautiful is I can witness these parts. I can laugh about it at times and move through it, move through the messiness. Like that's just part of life, I feel. So that's what I'll say about that.
It seems exactly what was most challenging is also likely like such a strength of your work, is that it's
Yeah.
such a universal experience. To be human is to be navigating the messy terrain of, as you say so eloquently, like the daily struggle of, it's not just the ups and downs of life, it's a daily experience of letting go and surrendering. I think that even getting on this podcast today, you know, I'm sure we've had our own iterations of that. So really appreciate your sharing that, and also modeling that through letting us see that part of your life and history, which is, you know, not something that everyone does. That we still live in a society where we try to only showcase the highlights reel. And
Yeah.
my mentor Rachel says, compare our bloopers to other people's highlights.
I love that. Yeah.
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 So tell me, what was one of the most rewarding parts of publishing your writing and sharing it so far?
Yeah. Seeing it in other people's hands has been really beautiful. A lot of people have sent me pictures of it, and just seeing someone physically like hold it, because it feels like they're holding a piece of my heart in their hands. And that feels so special. And I specifically, like, I didn't want to make it like the Kindle type books. Like I loved the feeling of like actually holding the book and like having it be something that someone could put near their nightstand or on their bookshelf or give it to someone else. It feels just so beautiful to me, and the support to that. I've never released a book, and I've been sharing my poems here and there on social media, but to see people show up like at this poetry event that you briefly spoke about, I had it over Zoom, and so many people from all walks of my life were there. Like my grandma spoke, and friends from Omega and Boulder. And yeah, I was so, as someone who like, I really shy away from being this, having the attention on me. I can be pretty introverted, and quieter by nature, to see that I could do that and I could take up space and receive love and give love, it really opened my heart to like new possibilities in my life.
It's really beautiful. I think at that event you mentioned that like learning how to publish a book was also like a process. And I imagine from a lot of survivors I know and love and have worked with over the years, like a lot of people these days, especially in the kind of aftermath of Me Too, like would like to share their stories. And is there anything you could say about that process, about learning and how that was both challenging and rewarding to learn and master, so to speak?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I realized is how important it is to lean on support and not do it alone. And because I did do a lot of it alone, and that was challenging. I noticed that there were certain people who had published books before me, who had self-published like me, and there was some fear around like asking them for that support. So I would tell people who are looking to publish to ask for support, that it's okay. And towards the end, I definitely did. I realized like, okay, I need more support with this. And my friend liked to call it that I had many midwives who were helping me birth this book into the world, and less so with like helping me figure out how to get my manuscript done and more of the technical stuff. It was more the emotional part of like what was coming up inside of me that I did need more support with, and people to help me. Like I'd get on the phone with someone and just be crying or overwhelmed, and yeah, they would help me breathe and just come back into the moment, because I did have a date that I wanted to publish it by, which was before my 30th birthday in July. And I think that also created some pressure of like, I need to get this done by this time. And so I'd also say like, if you can, letting that date be fluid can be helpful. There's just so much I learned, and yet I feel grateful for each of these parts of like, okay, I learned from that and from that, because it's just part of the process. And anytime, I think it's so brave to do something for the first time. And there's just naturally like, I think of it, I love the spiral image instead of like the staircase, where it's like, even when I felt like I was going backwards and like spiraling in the other direction, that it was just always leading me closer and closer to the release of the book. Yeah. And I would say, again, just trusting that process of like the windy path that it is to publish, because it's, at least my experience of it is, it's not super linear and like just check all the boxes. There was a lot more that needed to be, especially those emotions, to just be felt and not rush through that.
There's so much in there. The spiral image definitely resonates, and it's something that I find myself referencing a lot with myself and with clients around like that feeling of I've been here, I'm back, I've kind of regressed or gone backwards, or I'm not feeling that progress or healing momentum, and yet to recognize like the space between the rings, like what is different now. And I think that that's so useful to be reminded of, and to hear exactly like how even the process of publishing the book is a reflection of your learning to embrace the messiness and the letting go. Just it seems like that's like this real thread that has brought you here, and that this is your first podcast recording, and how that is so meaningful, like the first time you do anything. I feel like I told you this is my first time using this mic, and it's just like anytime it's the first it's so true. However small, it's a big deal because
Yeah.
it marks some sort of risk. But I don't know what this mic is going to do, if it's going to start squeaking or like fire is going to come out of it. Like you don't know until you try.
Yeah, until you try it. And that's what this whole process, I've just felt very brave. It's like I'm doing the hard things.
Mhm.
Love Glennon Doyle. We can do hard things.
So, kind of building on that, you've shared, I mean, Glennon Doyle, writing, nature, internal family systems.
Mhm.
Sounds like your support system and friends and writers have been like influential for you. Are there any particular resources that you would like to highlight that have been significant in your healing?
Yeah. And the first thing that comes to mind is therapy. I
Hashtag
have,
therapy works.
yeah, I've done a lot of therapy, but what's been really interesting to me lately is more somatic based therapy and embodiment work, and whether that's therapy or coaching. I There's only so much for me that I can do cognitively. Like I need to feel it in and through the body for healing to happen. And I actually found, like, in a lot of, first when I was getting into spirituality and yoga and Buddhism, it was like, okay, I need to transcend the body, like up and out. And there's been this shift where I'm realizing it's in and through. It's each day. Like my practices lately have been around really leaning into and fostering a sense of safety within my own body and my own being, because I have just experiences of not feeling safe, and then I deal with a chronic pain and fatigue syndrome that is related to the nervous system and is related to trauma and things like that. And so being able to really pause and feel my breath, a lot of, like, you'll see my hands on my heart, like just loving touch has been so powerful, and like movement. And my body can't move in the same ways that it used to because of some of the chronic pain. And that's been hard, and there's been grief there. And at the same time, I found new ways to express, and that may look like sitting down and just moving my arms and my body. Like it doesn't have to be, it's really letting go of what I think it should be and just meeting my body as it is in each moment. And even with my therapist, we've been doing EMDR work. And so that's also just been a powerful way to release. And it's also very like body centered for me. So bringing the body into everything is, and that's what I feel like art and creative expression also does, that because I'm moving and I'm creating and I'm getting into this space of playfulness. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that. Like whether I'm painting or writing or playing an instrument, like the critic can come up and the perfectionist and like, I hate this, like this doesn't look good. And I've been working with just creating for creation, like without a purpose of like, let me just write to write and paint to paint, and like have no kind of agenda of it needing to be the next painting that's hanging in a museum or something like. And even since with the book, like allowing myself to write without an agenda of like, oh, I need to publish another book.
You have a painting in a museum that I don't know?
No, I'm saying like, yeah, I'm that good.
I wouldn't be surprised. You're a woman of many, many talents. But truly, I think for listeners to realize that, like, I think of a poet as like more of a quieter introvert, and you've just sort of brought in like how critical your relationship to your body is, not just to probably your healing and recovery, but to your creativity and your life source. I love that.
Yeah, it's all interwoven, and just not seeing my body so much as a burden, but rather this place where like birthing happens, and birthing of whatever our, creative express. Like I think creative, like we're all kind of artists in a way. It's just what we choose to paint the world with. And like a mathematician is painting the world with math to me, like it and numbers. Like it's not, I think we all have that creative spark inside of us. It just, we've been told like this is what an artist is, this is a poet. And I like to like kind of dissolve some of that and stay a bit open and curious of like, for a while it was really hard for me to call myself a poet. Like I just didn't, it's like I can't call myself a poet. And it's like you can call yourself a poet if you want. Like that's okay to do.
When you said the museum comment, I thought the end of your sentence was going to be like hanging on someone's walls. So it kind of speaks to what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
you decide what the museum is, that
Mhm.
having your book held in your loved one's hands is rewarding, just as having something you make at home for, your niece or your friend is also rewarding. And where do we derive that sense of creativity and value? And
Yeah.
how much of our healing is about sharing it, like you talked
Mhm.
about being of service. And
Mhm.
it just is incredible to recognize, even in your initial like entry to spirituality and learning retreat centers, like that you sort of still had this thread that was pulling you towards service, even when maybe you were in the midst of your own kind of disorientation and I don't know what you'd call it, breaking open.
Breaking open. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
did
it is. It's like it feels a little bit like the service piece is it's an edge for me, because I do love to, as I said, just be more quieter and introverted. And then I also see the value in like sharing. And sometimes it's just sharing with yourself, but I do feel like there is value in sharing it with others and taking that next step when you feel ready for it. It doesn't have to be, and it could even just be, I'm going to share this poem with someone I love.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be on Facebook or something.
Did you discover all these different healing and art modalities through your recovery, or was that at an early age? I'd love to know like how you learned that you could sing or dance or paint.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was there when I was younger, and I really feel like it got sucked out of me. I mean, I think it was still there, but it just was buried. And putting so much of my focus on like getting into Notre Dame and school and being that high performing student, it's like, oh, there's not time for creativity. And so I really didn't consider myself a very creative being. And it wasn't until going to Omega and being around a lot of artists and people who were just playing the guitar on the field or uh, singing at an open mic that I started to recognize that like I wanted that too. And I remember, I'm having a memory right now of being in high school, and we'd have these open mic nights, and I would go sometimes and I'd feel such envy of like seeing these people up on stage and being like, there's some charge there that like I want to do things like that too, but really feeling like that wasn't accessible to me at that time. And I find envy to be a very powerful ignition, or like ignite. It
Mhm.
can spark something, because when we're willing to look at like our envy and jealousy and things like that and go within instead of looking outwards, it reveals underneath that envy, at least my experience of it, is desire for something. And I had a desire to create a relationship with the creative voice within me. And that's very much been part of my path.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I would say too, like being in recovery, especially with the eating disorder, I remember when I was at a treatment center, like we had a dance, like I think we did it like twice a month, where this dance teacher would come and we just move our bodies, and it was so fun. And then we'd have an art therapist come who would paint with us and do different collages. And those were always my favorite parts, because I felt an aliveness within myself, because what I was doing with the eating was numbing myself. So creativity to me is like, it's the antidote, because it's aliveness, it's pleasure, it's joy. So yeah, I'd say that my recovery journey also has been a piece of this as well.
Mm-hmm. That so resonates and is so different than how talk therapy used to be, so cerebral, and even still a lot of ways people practice. In recent years, I've encountered more yoga movement therapists who are like, I'm getting rid of my chairs, like, screw talking. So I love, I mean, in the seminal book, The Body Keeps Score, just the emphasis on holistic modalities, and that there's not a one size fits all. So you had this like natural inclination and strength towards expressing yourself. And it seems like through exposure and also just perseverance, you found your way back to those maybe initial gifts that you have.
Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of building on your memory from high school. Like if you think about a younger version of yourself at different, whatever age comes to mind, is there a message that you'd send to that younger Kaylee?
Yeah. I would let her know that it's okay and safe to feel. I'm sensitive and I feel a lot. I feel the joy, I feel the ache, all of it. And as a child, I feel I received messages of like, don't cry, like be quiet, like it's to, not to allow myself, because feeling is also expression too. It's like allowing whatever wants to move through to be experienced. And yeah, I felt like I had to numb those parts pretty early on, which is probably why I turned to eating disorder behaviors. One of the reasons is just like, oh, it's not okay to feel these big feelings. And I just have so much love for little Kaylee, like figuring out how to be human and like, okay, I guess even to this day I have, because I now love to cry. Like I cry all the time, and I cry too joyfully as well. Like I'm someone who, like, when I'm struck with joy, will be like laughing and crying at the same time. And I notice in our culture, there can be this like, oh, I'm not going to cry. Don't cry. Or like in a television show, they'll be like, oh, I'm crying. Like I need to stop. And I don't think there's anything wrong with crying. Like, let's feel our feelings. It's medicine. And so that's what I would say to little Kaylee. And also just keep playing, keep being you. Yeah.
When we met, you were working with children, and it all kind of makes sense that the way we often heal is through that inner child work and being able to befriend our younger selves. And I love just even seeing and hearing the way you expressed that compassion. I mean, I think that really is a reflection of the work that you have done and continue to do. That's not easy to relate to our most vulnerable parts with such kindness. So thank you for sharing. And I wish we had so much more time. I swear I could ask you so many questions, and I feel like we're hardly scratching the surface of this book. So I hope it's a good teaser really for people who are interested to know more about your story and the places you've gone internally, like you said. It's incredible when you mentioned like you've traveled and spent years at these incredible places, and yet it's so true, like that your writing is really focused internally. And I think that's such a bit powerful statement, because I honestly, when you first shared, I was like, "Oh, I wish I had gone to 5 seasons at Omega or traveled to Greece or wherever." And it's like that envy, right?
Yeah.
That desire, like I want that. And what is that, to look back inside and say, what is it there? It's the growth and the healing, being transformed in and out, like you said. What did you say? Through,
In and through, or
in and
something
through.
like that. And I also will say about that, I forget who said it, but it's like, wherever you go, there you are. It's so true. Like, I was still the same me in Chile, that
Right.
and just, it's very humbling to see that, like, oh, I can't like run away from myself, because there was a little bit of that going on in my early
Oh,
20s.
I know that. It's
Yeah.
not me. I'm gonna just change my external environment, leave jobs, partners, transfer college.
Yeah.
So I think you and I we're more similar than we are different, all of us.
Yeah.
So I guess to close for today, I would love to have you back on to get even more into the transforming pain into power and purpose, the way you so beautifully do. Just to invite you to say a few words about, what does transforming trauma mean to you? What comes to mind?
Yeah, what comes to mind is a line from one of my poems that says, "There is gold in the ache." And I believe that to be true, and that's something that I'll like recite to myself. And I'll speak for myself. I find this with a lot of people, like, we just want the gold, like we want the transformation of the trauma. The part of the process is being with that ache. It's what I talked about, like befriending what is present, what needs to be healed and seen, and to allow ourselves to like break, and just, not because we're broken. I believe that we are innately whole. It's more just to allow the breaking open of the heart to experience the pain, and then to allow it to be like churned and transformed and composted. And I feel my book is a living testament to that. It's like, so much of this, like, I just had like a binge and like felt horrible in my body, and would get my pen out and start writing, and a poem would come through, and like that something beautiful would come from this just like really achingly painful experience, because I was willing to like go into it. And I also feel like it's about being like transforming trauma is about being the alchemist of our lives, of like allowing ourselves to transform that, and then be of service and give it back. But I just would say to anyone who's like in it, to just give yourself grace if you are in the muck of it, and if you are just at the ache and you don't feel the gold. Like, I so get it. I've been there. I have moments today where I'm still like, I'm in the ache, and just to really allow and accept that that's where you're at, and not forcing. Like, I spent a lot of time trying to like force the transformation to happen before it was ready, before the blossoming was ready.
I just wrote gold in the ache and alchemy of our lives. I think if you ever do start your own podcast or meditation center, I think you might have some words and titles already.
Yeah, I am thinking about a podcast. It's going on in my heart and mind right now, some ideas, so we'll see.
That's beautiful. Well, I want to thank you, Kaylee, for being you and sharing your voice and story. You can contact Kaylee at moonbodyliving.com and learn more about her on her website, moonbodyliving.com, or follow her on Instagram at moonbodyliving. So thank you for tuning in and joining us today. And don't forget to subscribe to rachelgrantcoaching.com. You can learn more about sexual abuse recovery coaching and explore other resources available on the site. And please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. We have much